Welcome back to Chapters Unfolded. Ready for deep dive number 7 into atomic habits.
Always ready for more habit hacking. What's on the agenda today?
Well, we've talked about how tiny changes lead to remarkable results, but today we're going to uncover how our environment, secretly shapes our habits, even more than motivation can.
Whoa. Okay, so you're saying like where we are matters just as much as like what we want to do?
Exactly. There are all these studies. Like one showed that just by rearranging like a cafeteria, you can actually change what people choose to drink. And then there's another one about how the placement of an electricity meter can impact energy usage. Wild, right?
It's like we're puppets or something. I mean, it sounds kind of creepy, but also like super interesting.
It is a little bit unsettling. But that's what we're diving into today. So let's kick things off. Let's go to Massachusetts General Hospital where Dr. Ann Thorndike. She wanted to see if she could improve people's eating habits without even saying a word to them.
That's sneaky. How'd you do that?
She used this strategy called choice architecture. So picture this. You walk into the hospital cafeteria, and right there by the cash registers is this big refrigerator all stocked up with soda.
Prime real estate for those impulse buys, right?
Right. But here's the twist. Dr. Thorndike, she added water bottles to those refrigerators, and she put baskets of water near the food stations. Soda was still there, but now water was just as easy to grab.
I get it. So she made the healthy choice, the obvious choice.
Yep. And over just 3 months, soda sales dropped by more than 11%, while bottled water sales jumped up by 25%.
Crazy, right?
That's huge. It's like people go for what's convenient, even if they don't consciously think about it.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, how much control do we really have over our choices, right? Our environment's always nudging us, sometimes in ways we don't even realize.
Definitely makes you think. And it reminds me of Lehman's equation, this classical equation from psychology. It basically states that behavior is a function of the person in their environment.
So who we are, A and D where we are, both matter. Precisely. And this helps explain stuff like suggestion impulse buying, like those tempting displays at the grocery store checkout.
Oh, you mean the candy bars and magazines? Yeah. Definitely guilty of that.
Exactly. That's suggestion impulse buying. We don't really need those things, but the way they're presented to us, it just gets us.
Yeah, it's like our environment's whispering in our ear, treat yourself.
And most of that whispering is visual, which makes sense. Did you know, out of the 11 million sensory receptors in the human body, 10 million are dedicated to sight?
Wow, 10 million. Our eyes are like the superstars of our senses.
They are. And speaking of visual cues and how they affect us, have you ever heard about those fly stickers in the Schiphol airport urinals?
Fly stickers in urinals. That's a new one.
So the airport, they wanted to find a way to reduce cleaning costs in the men's restrooms, right? So they put this tiny sticker of a fly in each urinal.
And that actually worked.
Apparently so. Men just naturally aim for the fly. It's like an instinct. So their aim improved. Less spillage, less mess. Problem solved.
It's amazing how a tiny sticker can have such a big impact.
Yeah.
Makes you realize how much our surroundings affect us, even when we're not aware of it.
Totally. Visual cues are powerful, even the subtle ones. Remember the apple example from Atomic Habits?
You mean the one where just keeping a bowl of apples on the counter made him eat more of them?
Yeah, exactly. It's all about making the cues for your desired habits more obvious. Like, want to practice guitar more? Put the guitar stand in the middle of the living room. Or, if you want to remember to take your meds every night, leave the bottle by your toothbrush.
It's like putting a spotlight on the good habits, making them impossible to miss.
That's the idea. The principle here is, the more obvious a cue, the more likely the habit. And this leads to something even more interesting. It's not just about individual cues. It can be entire contexts that trigger our habits.
So it's not just seeing the guitar, it's being in the room where you usually play. The whole environment becomes a cue.
Exactly. Take social drinking. People often drink more in those settings, not just because they see others with drinks, but because of the whole atmosphere, right? Friends, music, lighting, it all combines to create this super powerful cue.
It's the entire experience that triggers the habit, not just one thing.
Exactly. And this explains why different people can have different habits associated with the same place. Our individual relationships to those environments kind of shape how we behave in them. For some, the couch is for reading. For others, it's for TV and snacks. Same couch, different associations.
Wow, this is making me rethink my relationship with my couch. So, if our environments have such a hold on us, can we even break free?
Definitely. Understanding context is key. There's this study, right? about insomniacs. They were told to only go to bed when they were tired. And if they couldn't fall asleep, they had to get out of bed and go to another room till they felt sleepy again.
So they were training themselves to only associate the bed with sleep.
Exactly. And it worked. They could fall asleep easier because their brains learned bed equals sleep, not tossing and turning.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
But what if you can't just redesign your whole life? Like sometimes you have to be in places that trigger bad habits.
Yeah, that's true. But even small changes can help. Sometimes all you got to do is change your environment. Find a new place to work, a new coffee shop to study in, a new park bench to read on. It breaks you out of those ingrained cues, you know?
A change of scenery, a fresh start.
Yeah, like hitting the reset button on your habits. Imagine this. You always eat unhealthy snacks while watching TV on the couch, right? Move your TV time to a different room. You might just find it easier to resist those snacks.
It's like those cues lose their power when you're in a new environment.
Exactly. And James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, he took this idea even further. He actually rented a whole separate office space just for work.
Wait a minute, a whole separate office just for his habits.
Yep. He realized that having this clear separation between work and his personal life, it made him way more productive. It was like his brain knew, okay, I'm in the office now, it's work time, no distractions.
That makes sense. But a separate office isn't exactly an option for everyone.
True, but you can still use the one space, one use idea even in smaller environments, like designate a reading chair, a writing desk, a spot at the kitchen table for work, and you can even do it digitally. Use different devices for different things.
So it's all about creating those clear boundaries, even if you don't have a ton of space.
Exactly. When our environments are stable and predictable, our habits tend to be more stable and predictable too. Each space has a purpose, and our brains, they kind of learn to automatically shift into the right mindset when we enter that space. It's like setting the stage for success.
I like that. So we've talked a lot about how our physical environment affects our habits. But what about our digital environments? Any tips for making good habits stick in the digital world?
Oh, absolutely. Our digital environments, they're like just as influential as our physical ones, maybe even more so, you know? We spend so much time on our phones and computers and tablets.
It's like we're carrying these little habit-making machines with us everywhere we go.
Exactly. And they're always shaping our behavior, whether we realize it or not. And just like with our physical spaces, we can be, more deliberate about how we design our digital environments to help us reach our goals.
So where do we start? My phone, honestly, it feels like this crazy mess of notifications and apps. I don't even know where to begin.
Declutter. It's like having a junk drawer, right? Except it's digital and you carry it with you everywhere. Those endless notifications, cluttered home screens, apps that we never even use, it's all just digital clutter. And it distracts us and makes it hard to focus.
Okay, makes sense. But what's the digital version of, like, tidying up our desks?
Well, first, delete any apps you haven't used in the past month. Then try organizing your home screens. Group similar apps together and move the most important ones to the front.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And just like we talked about with designating physical spaces for certain activities, you can do the same thing with your digital devices.
So, like, I could use my laptop just for work, my tablet for reading, and my phone for social media and texting.
Yeah, exactly. Creating those digital boundaries, it helps reduce the urge to multitask, and that can be a huge productivity killer.
Makes sense. So each device has its own purpose, and our brains know what to expect when we pick it up.
Right. And remember, it's not just about what you see, it's about what you don't see, too.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about your online feeds. Are you following accounts that, inspire you, stuff that aligns with your values? Or are you constantly bombarded with negativity and comparisons?
Ooh, that's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in that endless scroll and just forget that we actually have some control over what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's important to curate your online feeds intentionally. Unfollow accounts that trigger negative emotions or make you feel bad about yourself. Fill your feeds with content that uplifts you, teaches you something, or just makes you happy.
It's like creating this little digital sanctuary for your mind, a place where
Yeah.
you can recharge and just focus on what matters.
Exactly. And just like we use those visual cues in the physical world to kind of nudge ourselves towards better habits, we can do the same in the digital world.
Any tips for making those digital cues work for us?
Think about your goals. Want to write more? Make sure your writing app is right there on your home screen. Want to exercise more? Put a reminder on your calendar. Set an alarm on your phone.
So we're using those visual triggers to make the things we want to do more obvious, more accessible.
Exactly. It all comes back to that core idea. Our environments shape our habits, both physically and digitally.
This is awesome. This episode is full of so many useful tips. It's like we're getting a crash course in how to design our worlds for success.
And remember, it's not about becoming like slaves to our environment. It's about understanding how they affect us and then using that knowledge to our advantage.
Right. It's about taking back control and creating spaces, both physical and digital, that actually help us live better, more fulfilling lives.
That's the key. Becoming architects of our own environments, not just passive bystanders shaped by forces we don't even understand.
I love that. Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into this chapter of Atomic Habits, what are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind?
First, recognize the power of your environment. It's not all about willpower. Our surroundings, they're always nudging us in certain directions.
It's like there's this invisible force guiding our choices.
But the good news is we can become aware of that force and,
Wow.
we can start to steer it where we want to go.
We're not just puppets, we can be the puppeteers.
Exactly. We can be the architects of our environments, both physical and digital. We can make good habits easier and bad habits harder.
It's about making those positive cues obvious, minimizing those negative ones, and just creating spaces that really truly support our goals.
And remember, even small changes can make a big difference. You don't have to change your whole life overnight.
What's one small step our listeners could take today to start putting this into action?
I'd say choose one small change to your environment. Could be physical or digital that encourages a positive habit. Maybe it's putting a book on your nightstand, decluttering your computer desktop, or just putting, I don't know, a bowl of fruit on the counter. Start small, be consistent, and watch those tiny changes add up over time.
Love it. And for our listeners who are ready to start making those changes, we have a question for you. What one small change could you make to your environment today to nudge yourself towards a positive habit? Tell us about it in the comments. We'd love to hear your ideas.
It's amazing to think that just changing our surroundings can make such a big difference in our lives.
For sure. It really shows how powerful it can be to be intentional about the spaces we create, both online and offline. We're not just passive bystanders. We can be the architects of our own environments.
And when we understand these little things that shape our habits, we can make better choices and live more fulfilling lives.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive into how our environment shapes our habits. It's definitely making me rethink how I design my own spaces, both online and offline.
I hope it inspires our listeners to do the same. Even small changes can lead to big results over time.
And remember, it's not about being perfect or letting our environments completely control us. It's about understanding how they influence us and using that knowledge to our advantage.
It's about creating environments that help us achieve our goals, support our well-being, and help us become the best versions of ourselves.
Nicely said. Well, that wraps up our 7th deep dive into Atomic Habits. We've learned so much about the power of environment, and I hope you're feeling motivated to make some changes.
And if you're enjoying these deep dives, be sure to like this episode and subscribe to Chapters Unfolded for more explorations into the world of, amazing books.
We're on a mission to help you unlock the power of knowledge one chapter at a time. So hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, and join us next time for another deep dive into a life-changing book.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those habits forming.
So, what one small change could you make to your environment today to encourage a positive habit? Share your ideas in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you come up with.
It's amazing how even little tweaks to our surroundings can have a big impact, right?
It really shows how powerful it is to be mindful of the spaces we create, both physically and digitally. We're not just passive bystanders.
Yeah.
We can actually be the architects of our own environments.
And once we get a handle on these subtle influences that shape our habits, it's like we can make better choices, live more fulfilling lives.
This deep dive into environmental influence has been super insightful, definitely making me rethink how I design my spaces, online and offline.
Yeah, I hope it inspires our listeners to do the same. Even small changes can add up to big results over time.
Totally. And hey, it's not about being perfect or letting our environments completely control us. It's about understanding how our surroundings influence us and using that knowledge to our advantage.
Exactly. It's about creating environments that support our goals, nurture our well-being, and help us become the best versions of ourselves.
Well said. So that wraps up our 7th deep dive into Atomic Habits. We've learned a ton about the power of our environment. Hopefully you're feeling inspired to make some changes.
And if you're enjoying these deep dives, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to Chapters Unfolded for more explorations into the world of fascinating books.
We're here to help you unlock the power of knowledge one chapter at a time. Hit that subscribe button, share this with a friend, and join us next time for another deep dive into a life-changing book.
Until then, keep those pages turning and those habits forming.